So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, guests, ISACA Bahrain members. Welcome to the session on Zero Trust Network Architecture, Microsoft case study by Abbas Kudrati. My name is Dr. Mazen Ali, and I will be moderating the session for you today. So just to introduce our speaker for the day, Abbas Kudrati has been associated with the chapter for many years, since 2003, 2004. He was one of the board members actually. And then when he moved to Australia, we were still keeping in touch with him. Thank you very much, Abbas, for making the time today for being with us.
Absolutely.
Abbas Kudrati is a long-term cybersecurity practitioner and CISO, is Microsoft Asia's lead chief cybersecurity advisor for the Cybersecurity Solutions Group. He also, in addition to working for Microsoft, he serves as an executive advisor to Deakin University, LaTrobe University, HITRUST Asia, EC Council Asia, and to several security and technology startups. He supports the broader security community through his work with ISACA Chapters and student membership and mentorship as well. He's also a part-time industry professor with Deakin University and a regular speaker on zero trust, cybersecurity, cloud security, governance, risk, and compliance. So without further ado, I will pass the microphone to Abbas so that he can start his session.
Sure. Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for the introduction. But I thought I'll give you a little bit of more background about my role. I have been in Bahrain. I lived in Bahrain for a number of years, worked for companies like KPMG Fakhro, worked for Ernst & Young Bahrain. I was a head of security with electronic government. And that's when I moved back to Kuwait. I came from Kuwait and went back to Kuwait. And after Kuwait, I moved to Melbourne, Australia. So I thought let's start with a trivia question first. Already Dr. Mazen has shared my background, but I thought let me start. How many years Bahrain chapter is officially been inaugurated? Anyone have an answer? Do you know when was the Bahrain chapter launched? Anyone on the answer Q&A? Nah. Okay, I'll share some of the old memories. So this was the agenda for our inauguration ceremony, which was held on 3rd of March 2010 in Bahrain Society of Engineers in Jufair. We had a number of delegates in that event, and those I'm not sure who is here on the call for last 10 years in the chapter. Anyone? They would recall if you have attended this meeting. This was a press release, which was released on 5th of March in GDN in Bahrain. And as you can see, the initial first board member team who worked hard along with and the leadership of Khalifa Jawdar. So this was the first board team. This was the official inauguration committee member and the press release photo shoot we had in Bahrain Society of Engineers. This was the event photos. I was the master of ceremony on that day. So I led the whole event for 2 to 3 hours, along with some chief guests and delegates. I'm sure you can see some familiar photos. And these were the speakers of the day and some of the exam top scorer award. I can see Ali here. He got the CISM top scorer award, and along with the board members. Bring back the old memories. And this was my farewell party, along with myself and Sundar Malai, who were the 2 board members left Bahrain in the month of May 2011. That's the time I moved back to Kuwait, and from Kuwait, after 2 years, I left to Australia. And now I'm in here for the last 7 years. I'm living in Melbourne, Australia. So that was a bit of a rundown to the memory lane. I thought I'll start with that. Those who know me don't know me. Bahrain is my favorite country among all the countries I've lived. I owe a lot to Bahrain. That was my first CISO role I got in the Bahrain. I had my daughter born there, so a lot of love for this country, as well as the warm people of Bahrain. I miss it. Okay, let's get back to our agenda. So what we'll cover today in next, it's already 8:10, so around 45 minutes. We'll touch upon what Zero Trust is. I will share some case study, or not some case study, but Microsoft case study, what we did into the journey. And I do have a click-through demo to show you how Zero Trust works in an action. If time permits, I will go through all the demos or one or two demo, and I will share some details in terms of if you have to start the journey, what you should do and how you should start in this particular. Is everyone aware what Zero Trust as a concept is? Have anyone heard this concept? You can type it in the chat. And Dr. Mazin, if you see anyone answering that, please unmute yourself and tell me. Who knows what Zero Trust is? Looks like I'll be talking alone for next 1 hour. Make it interactive.
I think none have admin right. The admin right.
So that's one of the principles.
Yeah.
Yep. So if you recall, back in 1990s, when employees were exclusively within the corporate office, our entire network was behind a corporate firewall. We used to call it castle and a moat kind of a situation, where anyone within the corporate network, we trusted them. That was our core principle. But however, later on, the world has changed, and we have moved on from traditional network to more of a internet-based network, especially when iPhone was released. The whole thought process of managing a network was changed now, because people have started creating those mobile app. We have started having more SaaS application. We have now corporate vendors and customers and contractors now connecting to our corporate network. We had VPN and internet-facing devices came into dominance in those times. So the network was really expanded. So that really changed the whole thinking process, that how can we get more assurance about the devices which our employee are using, or the identity which these customers and contractors and vendors are using to connect our network. How can we have more assurance or build upon a security on top of it? Because that was a challenge in the new world, where devices are no longer within the perimeter of company. They are much beyond, much outside. And if you look at the realities of network perimeter, we had a single point of failure. If something goes wrong at a router level or a perimeter firewall, our entire network was under the threat. And if you look at how security and IT work together, especially with the number of tools they use, especially into their architecture strategy, especially when security says the architecture should look in this fashion, and IT will say, according to my architecture, this is like this. There was always a miscollaboration between security and IT. That has continued for a number of years, because IT wants to focus everything on network side, and security has a different requirement. They want to focus on data security. They want to focus on identity. They want to focus on applications. So there was a bit of a disjoint in the way they work. So typically, when we allow traditionally, I would say not typically, but when we had employee working remotely, what we do, especially when they're connecting the SaaS application, we try to hairpin their network. From the endpoint device, what they use, we try to bring them back to the network, and from the after getting authenticated or after applying the security policy which are in on-premise, we then allow them to go and access those resources either on the cloud, either on the on-prem, or any other SaaS provider what you have. But what happens in that case? Anyone have a question? Okay, you can go on mute. So yeah, what happened in that case? It slows down the whole network, because now you are putting a lot of load on your network infrastructure, which is on premises. And
Dr. Asra, please mute Khalifa. Okay. Sorry about that, Abbas. Please go ahead.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. So and we started adding lots of agent onto the device endpoint, and all those device endpoint agent what we're running onto your device was really degrading the whole performance. We had a boot time we had a longer boot time. We had to focus on lots of integration. We had to focus on lots of monitoring for the security folks. It was really not a good user experience. And if one of those products work, it will give a false alarm to security operation that something is gone wrong in that side. So we had to really think about moving them from classic approach where everything was restricted within the network to outside the network and build that strategy or build that access control where we are protecting every assets anywhere they are there. Could be asset, could be your data, could be your endpoint, could be your handheld devices, or could be your documents as well. So, and those has to be along in line with your centralized policy management engine, which could, and those policies could be according to your corporate environment. And I'll talk about that, how that works, right? So 2004, Jericho Forum had started this concept of a deperimeterization. And from there, Forrester had coined a new word called zero trust, because they believed in the same concept of deperimeterization, and they started working, creating those principles and architecture frameworks and certain other requirement on how it can be done. Now, at the same time, Microsoft also started their journey with things like cloud security, things like passwordless, things like conditional access. And from 2014 onwards, the hype has really shooten up. Every vendor is now talking about how their product can fit into the zero trust architecture, and every technology vendors are now creating more and more artifacts and principles and guideline how you can build upon your whole architecture with a zero trust concept as a core principle. So when we talk about zero trust, it is more of an architecture decision. Of course, there is a technology element required in that, but initially it is more of an architecture decision. It is an access control decision as well. What are you trying to do here in that case is you want to validate every signal which you are getting from either your device or identity, and apply the risk framework on that, or you can say assess the risk of those signals. If they are risky, apply it with the policy according to your company, whether if this particular device has a risk of a malware, then I'm not going to allow them to access my corporate data or my corporate network. So in this case, trust no one, verify everyone. You will be verifying every signal, irrespective of whether they are in your on-premise location or if they are outside the location. So irrespective of the network location, irrespective of where they are, and irrespective of their verified identity or a managed desktop, you will verify their access and apply the policy based on the corporate requirement, and then only you give them access to the data on them. So there is a kind of a trust gate in between. So let's dive a little bit deeper on that. So as I was talking about, it's more of a strategy decision to apply a security assurance, which will really lead on to multiple benefits. First is a productivity, because now you are explicitly verifying the access trust for all the signal, identities, device, and data and everything. And based on the risk, you're dynamically increasing the trust or decreasing the trust or applying the control which they needed. On the security operations side, also it gives you a better visibility onto your assets, which are not even inside the company, but also outside the company. Typically, when we have a SOC in our organizations, we are only focusing on what's there within the firewall, within my network, within my own local network. We don't focus what's connecting from outside. That's really creates a bit of a blind spot there. So applying these principles, which I will share in the next slide, really increases the security and also increases the productivity, because now you are allowing your employee to work from home and be more productive. But as a security folks, you also want to make sure that the employee who is working remotely, employee who is using those devices, managed or unmanaged, you have a good assurance as a security professional that my network is secure and I'm watching all the signals as a part of my analytics engine. Right? So this new reality requires a new thinking as well. So there are three core principles, and somebody asked me the question, is zero trust is about least privilege? Yes. So the first principle is explicit verify. We call it trust no one, verify everyone. In this case, you are verifying every signal which you get from your device identity as a two core, and apply those conditional access engine and then verify. So second principle is a least privilege. In this case, we do not want to give anyone in the organization admin privilege. The privileges are given based on role-based access control, or RBAC as we call it, based on need to know, need to do basis, and based on just in time, just enough access. That means as a part of your project, if you are focusing on identity security first, you need to make sure you eliminate all your admin control. Now you may ask why? How can I remove all the security, all the admin users from my company? Because what happens is when you're building this kind of an architecture, and identity becomes your new firewall. If your identity is compromised, and if hacker can get hold of one identity, and from that, if he navigates into your on-premises Active Directory, they will immediately target the privileged users first. And once they get privileged users, they have the keys of the kingdom, right? So that's why this principle is also really important. We need to work towards how we can eliminate every admin users in them and only give them access based on when they want to work in that area. And that's where your PIM and PAM kind of a solution, or just in time, just enough access in the cloud world of Azure cloud world, it comes into play. The third principle we talk about as a part of zero trust architecture is a assume breach. Now, in case of assume breach, we really need to think about that we are constantly under attack. Our objective is to reduce the blast surface, attack blast surface. So that means we have to have a defensive layer of all the controls in our environment. For example, if my phishing gateway or my mail gateway has not been effective in terms of sending the phishing email, if that is compromised or been passed out, then I have my EDR solution, which really kicks in and help me in protecting my desktop for any kind of an exploit. If that control has been failed out, then your second control will come into picture for identity protection. Could be on Azure AD or could be on on-prem AD. If that control fails in, then I have my CASB in case any of the data has been leaked. So we really want to follow those MITRE framework of a kill chain framework and make sure that we have controls at a multiple layer. That way, if in case of an old classic environment, if one machine within the internal network is compromised, the whole network is at risk. However, in case of zero trust, if one device has been compromised or been affected, it is just one device and not the entire network, because you are now isolating the whole network based on deperimeterization or microsegmentation. Okay. Any questions up till here in terms of principles? Okay. So now we need to go a little bit of old school, where you learn your IT fundamentals: input, process, output, right? Remember that input, process, output. So in this case, input is my signals, and our signals are from my device and user. So from the device side, I want to know whether device is managed or unmanaged. I want to know whether there is any threat exist on this particular device or not, and many more. And from the user point of view, I want to know if the user is having a multi-factor authentication, or is there any behavioral change in terms of time they will connect to, or in case of location, they try to use it. Based on the signal risk, then I want to take a decision based on my organization policy, whether I want to allow them a full access towards my modern app, SaaS application, legacy, or on-prem network, or I want to increase an assurance because the signals are a bit risky in terms of the password which the employee is using is been compromised, and I want to increase the assurance or ask them to reset the password before they try to access my network. So we take those decisions in middle, and according to those decisions, then we apply the policy on a particular resources. Could be my on-premises application, could be my SaaS, or any of my legacy application, or any of my modern application. So input, process, output, signal, decision, and enforcement. And this applies across not only for identity and device, but we want to apply this across application, infrastructure, network, and data. And I'll give you a quick walkthrough what can be done in all those fashion. So very first question we need to ask when you're starting this, creating that zero trust architecture, as I call it. First of all, of course, the very first question goes in about who are your users and what application they are trying to access and how they're going to use it and why they are doing it that way. So yeah, my users could be my only corporate employee in my company, or it could be the employees as well as some contractor who are constantly working in your network. Applications could be a SharePoint Online, or could be a core banking application, or any application which the maximum number of employees are using it. We are not talking about customer application here, right? In the second case, we want to know what conditions are required. Are they only required to have a single factor authentication or an SSO, or do you have second factor authentication for every application they try to access in the corporate resources? And those are my control. If I see certain risk on that particular control. Do I increase assurance in that case, or am I happy with that? Once I have those initial questions based on what I want to start with, then I want to consider the number of other set of conditions. Now, conditions could be which users, what are the users and which group membership they are. Are they part of an internal user or external, or any particular separate a group or a business unit within them? How I'm going to manage the device health and the compliance state. Do I need all my employee to be on Windows 10 only, or do I allow Windows 8 as well? Do I have a certain set of policy in terms of security patches required? Do I want to allow any of my employee to use or connect to my network, even though if there is antivirus been outdated or the antivirus is missing? So those questions has to be there. Next one could be my SaaS and on-prem application, or how are they accessing it? Through a trusted device, through a managed device, and unmanaged device. Are all my employees in the same physical locations, or they are in different countries as well? Maybe if I have business in Dubai and Saudi Arabia and many other. So do I allow them to access from them, or only from Bahrain? So those conditions has to be applied. Do my employee only work from 9 to 5, or what time they work in? Are you allowing them to work in the middle of the night? And if they work in the middle of the night, all of a sudden, then I want to increase my assurance, or I want to block my access. So those kind of answers you need to collect before you start in terms of applying those conditions. Once I have my first two areas, then I want to take a decision whether, based on the conditions are there, do I allow them to access it? Or shall I increase the assurance by asking them a second factor authentication? Or if I find the risk on their password, then I want to ask them to reset the password. Or I want to block the application if they are trying to access anything which is on-premise, because those are the legacy application, right? So those answer has to be done. And this is how it looks as an architecture. So here I have my devices, which I will get the risk from multi-factor authentication or session risk. I have my, identities. I have my devices. I want to know the inventory and risk status. I continuously assess based on the threat intelligence. I apply my organization policy using my policy engine or enforcement engine. And then accordingly, based on what data classify I have and all, it can provide the access, adaptive access towards my application, infrastructure, and network. And there is a continuous automation and visibility analytics as well. I'll show you a quick demonstration on that. So what I talked about initially, this is how it looks together. So here are my conditions on the left-hand side, as you can see, or my identity provider could be my federated Microsoft, Google ID. I have my trusted and untrusted device or compliant device, which are Android, iOS, Mac, or Windows. My physical location could be geolocation, or could be my corporate network, which is internal and external. And a kind of what kind of method they're using or application. Is it a browser-based app, or they are the client-based application? They are then sends the signals constantly, and the risk is evaluated based on the company policy. If the policy is effective, according to your real-time evaluation engine, there is a machine learning algorithm which constantly give a score at the back end, which is very quick. You don't see it in a literal way. And then according to this risk score, I may say, yes, tick, go and access my cloud application, or block the cloud application and only allow SaaS application, or I want to only give them a read-only access towards that, or I want to apply all this control which I talked about in the previous slide. This is how the whole thing comes into a play. A little bit of a wider view. I have shamelessly put all the Microsoft technology to give you a better idea in terms of, because one of the whole concept is we want to have a cloud adoption, right? Because when they're working remotely, we saw a huge increase in customer demand, where they are migrating all this on-prem application towards the cloud. And in this case, we are identifying the user risk using our Azure ATP, Cloud App Security, Hello for multi-factor, and Azure MFA. And device, you have either partner device management or Intune and whatnot. This is our core conditional access engine. This is where you set all the policies from Active Directory point of view, as well as for B2B, which is your external users. You apply those policy, you remediate the risk either by asking them to reset the password using your password reset self-service portal, and then you apply or give them the access. On the right-hand side, you see all kind of application could be cloud, multi-cloud, modern application, SaaS application, legacy application, even your documentations based on that, where your Azure information protection come into play for applying the security on the documents. And this is where your signal decision and enforcement policy comes into play. Take a short pause, and if you have any questions so far, then I will start my case study on Microsoft. All good? Okay. No question is a good question. All right. So Microsoft has been on this journey for a number of years. We started our journey in focusing more on identity initially because we had a number of employees who has been working remotely, and person like me, I'm a home employee. I never go to office because I cover a wider region in Asia. So even though I have an office in Melbourne, but I'm a home employee. So in my case, when I joined the Microsoft, I was just shipped a blank new machine. I just logged in onto that machine and I had to reset my password. I called the help desk. They gave me a temporary password. I enrolled my phone and entered my username and password from my Active Directory, and all the policies has been pushed on the device. And I was connected to my corporate network remotely through some application still on premises. So we use VPN for that. Otherwise, everything was on the cloud. So identity was really important for us. Second key priority for us was on the device health, and the third was on the privileged users, because that was the biggest I would say the most critical task into our journey. So how we started is we first started moving all our critical assets slowly, one by one, from internal network to internet. We only kept the most critical application on premises because we wanted to learn our learnings from how things behave, what's the user reaction, what are the threats we see once we move all the applications from internal network to external network or to the internet. So any application we create within Microsoft for our own usage, we call it internet ready. It has to be first internet ready, period. So by default, everything is hosted on the internet, and that's how we start applying all the security control in the fashion. We wanted to have an improved user experience, especially when it goes to the internet first, right? Because now that employees are remotely, we just don't want them to key in the MFA or second factor authentication every time. So there was an element of a single sign-on. So in Microsoft, we don't even have a password. We are completely passwordless. So when I log into my device, there is a Windows Hello camera, which biometrically checks me and authenticates me, and I entered it. If for some reasons the camera biometric doesn't work, then I have a second option of using a 6-digit PIN, and I get entered. If I move my device from Melbourne or Australia to any other country which I have not traveled for last 1 year, for example, which is a real case now, I haven't traveled for 1 year last, immediately it will prompt me for a second factor authentication, because now the risk profile is changed based on my location, right? So absolutely. And there is an element of all the telemetry information which we have to collect, because now monitoring is very important for security operations. Because now that employees are working remotely, they are accessing all the application. They may be using some of the applications which are not sanctioned, which is one of my key critical challenge in the security space. So if I don't have a good monitoring system in place, I will be having a blind spot in that area. So that was one of the major element for us. So this is a bit of a insider. Don't take a snapshot of that. So we had multiple types of internet connection on an on-premise world. So we had guest access, we had employee internet, and we had employee corpnet. So in terms of a guest, you require an employee sponsorship if you try to connect a guest. It's an open access, but you need to enter, for example, my email address. And once I get an email saying that so-and-so is trying to connect it, I approve it, only then you get an access. Very less security, but of course the employee has to sponsor that. Our second internet connection is mostly user multi-factor authentication device, and are only for managed device. If it is unmanaged device, you can't connect to employee internet, and that's our default connection on that. Second one is on employee corpnet, in which MFA is required, device has to be managed, plus device health also is checked, because now we are in the corporate network, because there are some critical applications which we run still internally, and they are in a separate zone. And if you are trying to access to that corporate even remotely, there is a second element of an assurance which has been required. Or sometimes we might have to fire up a VPN to get access to that area as well. But our whole objective was to eliminate VPN completely in that case, right? So these were the number of phases which we had gone through in our own journey. It took us 18 months into where we are today, and we had almost 15 people. You will be surprised, because we are 150,000 employees worldwide. However, the core team who was working on this Zero Trust architecture project was only 15. Among them, there was one project manager who was orchestration doing the entire project, and the different team members were working in a different business unit. So we had a kind of a hub and spoke model. You must have heard the terminology called a BISO, Business Information Security Officer. So similarly, we had a role who were working in those teams and doing the education part, doing the onboarding part of the employee, constantly taking the requirement and feeding it back to the project manager in that space. So in the pre-zero trust model, our devices were not managed. We never required it because everything was internal. We had only single factor authentication, and there was no requirement for identity security. However, when we started the journey, our first target was identity-driven security. So identity became a very key critical success factor for us. And we had to work really hard, especially eliminating all those admin users. They were the toughest part because, Microsoft is a tech company, it's a developer company. The biggest population of employees are developers, other than me. I hate development. So yeah, so developers were tough. If you ask them, give away your password, give away your admin credentials, they would start screaming about. So we need to work in that space, creating something called PAW, Privileged Access Workstation, or SAW, which is a Secure Access Workstation. Those workstations are highly secured and specially designed for a particular task. So there are a number of strategies we had to adapt in that case. So we eliminate our password. We became passwordless over a period of time. And then we focus on the device health, which I was talking about. Then we focus on verifying the access. So if the identity is healthy, if the device is managed, and then you verify the access, whether what you want to do, apply the risk privilege model, check the access or check the health of the device before you allow them to access. So if it meets my policy requirement, in terms of patches, in terms of health, in terms of antivirus, anti-malware, everything is up to date. Only there can you get access to that. The last phase, which is still a kind of a proof of concept, where we are working right now in verifying the health of the service which employee is trying to connect. So before even going to identity, device, and access verification, we want to check the service health itself first. Is the service healthy? If that is yes, then everything else will fall into a play. So distinct phases: identity, device, access, and then verification of that, constantly verified using the telemetry of information of users and access management. This is a bit of a rundown. So let me go back. This is how it was: flat network before. Everything was within the corpnet. Then we started creating those segmentation, unmanaged internet and managed internet. We had a variety of that. And next one, we started publishing all the application on the internet. We use VPN as a discovery tool as well. So based on the VPN log, we started we learned a lot that which applications are still required to connect using VPN. And then that's how it gives us an idea that so-and-so application, for example, expense management, used by all the employee. And for that, even today, we require to connect via VPN because it's one of the most critical application, and we still are working on moving that or towards the cloud. I can access it from remotely, but it requires a on-demand VPN to be turned on automatically. And I try to open that app. So VPN, we use it as a discovery tool as well. It really helped us in identifying what we have. So based on understanding from our discovery, then we had a zone. That okay, my low impact zone, I would put all my VoIP phones, printers, and everything into that zone. So that becomes my first or one of the micro segmented network. Then I had a high impact. It could be IoT or a life safety devices or any of the critical like cameras and those kind of things, which are high impact in a way. That those were in a separate zone, and we know that who will require access to that. So today, if I try to access a high impact zone from remotely, I don't have a requirement to access that, and it will be not, it won't be granted, but I can still access certain low impact applications. Then I have my sensitive or business critical segment. They're in a separate zone. So we start creating those specialized segmented zone in a zero trust network architecture framework. And accordingly, I will allow my user to access based on their role profile, based on their need and what role they have, which I get it from my Active Directory to those various zones. And I can also apply the further level of control in terms of how much investment I want to do, or what are the various layer of control I want to apply on those various segmented zone I have, right? So some of the benefits we got: 50% reduction time in terms of productivity benefit for uptime, for booting time of our devices, 75% reduction into our device issues, battery life almost increases, we have a faster boot time as well. We eliminate shadow IT because now we completely monitor everything, and any employees try to access any of the application which are not sanctioned, we use our CASB tool to protect them and block them. We started seeing further authentication without any user interaction, because now once the device health and identity health is identified, we don't need to ask our employee to key in the second factor every time. It goes simply just goes through, right? No more password. So there are less password help desk call for resetting the password. I haven't changed my password, or we don't change our password once a year. Only once a year I have to reset my password. Otherwise, I don't even know what my password is, because once I create, I forget. I don't need to remember because I never use it. Everything is through either my authenticator app on the phone, or through my Windows Hello, or the 46-digit PIN, what I have it. So that's something which going passwordless or password security is one of the key project to begin the whole idea. So there is something called RAMP, Rapid Modernization Plan, where the first thing you need to do the first thing first. It's like a burger. You need to align your strategy in terms of what you want to do first among all the 6 pillars which I talked about: network, data, identity, and all. Then you define your identity parameter in terms of multi-factor authentication or going to the passwordless. You define your device health integrity in terms of what level of compliance or security you want on the device side, and then you start working on your first strategy draft and keep on fine-tuning it further by applying various segmentation on that. Oh, I'm still talking about zero trust while I need to do a demo. So let me just 5 minutes. I'm going to run through very quickly on the demo slides, considering I have next 7 minutes to see that. So I will walk you through some of the use cases in a practice. So hacker uses a stolen credential to try to log in a company resource from a risky IP. Employee needs to access an on-premise line of business app while away from the risk. Download the corporate data on a personal device. We want to block that. Absolutely. We don't want him to share or her to share any of the data to outside external parties. So let's look at some of the demo. First one, which is very important when people are working from home, is multi-factor authentication. So for the sake of easiness, I've used Google stuff for the demonstration purpose. So it's a Google app. I use my username, password. It asks me for second authentication. I have my watch or my phone, and I just click on approve. Simple. It authenticates me, but it gives me a terms of usage, because as a part of GDPR and many compliance requirements, you need to have an employee concurrence or authorization that you are going to monitor, you are going to watch everything, and this is, you understand all the terms and conditions. Accept it. It records in your database, and boom, they can get access to your Google Suite or any application in this case, however they want. In second case, I want device to be managed and compliant to access my corporate requirement. That's a key challenge, right? When employees are working from home, they are not within the firewall. They try to access an application, username, password, second factor authentication is done. Yes, but it will say that you are trying to use a device which is not provided by the company, and you need to enroll them before I allow you to access. So automation enrollment, they are not even in the company, they are at home. Once they click on enroll, they can get access to the company data, because now the device is managed and you can monitor all the security and health towards that. Second one, I want to limit and audit the session from a non-managed device, right? So let's see, trying to access the corporate application, username and password, and it will say yes, notified, second factor. Now it says that I'm going to monitor this application for the security purpose. Now I'm monitoring it. I try to go to my corporate approved cloud storage, could be my Google Drive or could be my OneDrive. I have a sensitive file. I want my employee to be productive, but I don't want to hinder them just because they don't have a corporate machine, because office was closed, they did not have it. You have a desktop, but now they have a home machine and you want them to work, but you can't manage the home device because it's the personal device, but still want them to work. So they can go, they can read only, they can do everything. But as soon as they try to download it on their home machine, it gets blocked, saying that your corporate policy or security policy doesn't allow you to download this particular file on an unmanaged device, right? That's my use case. And I can monitor that in my CASB, saying which particular user, which IP address, what they're trying to do and all, right? Next one quickly. I want to govern the data access on an unmanaged device by protecting the data on a managed app. Now, what happens in this case? Employee has a phone. So you don't provide the phone to employee. It is his personal phone, and the employee wants to access corporate email using an Outlook app. They go to Outlook app, they create the username, they try to log in with their corporate username and password. Notification is been sent. Now it is said that you have to restart the app because you want to apply security on an app, not the device. So we are talking about mobile application management, not the device management. In this case, you are enforcing them to have a PIN on that particular app, not on the phone. Phone is not managed by you. You don't provide the phone to the employee. It is the employee phone. You provide only the app and the data. So you have full right to give them, apply the security on them. So PIN required. Now the employee can access the corporate emails. They have all the emails in them. There is a sensitive file in the email. They can open it, read through all the email. It's good. Now the employee tries to move from corporate OneDrive to a personal Google Drive. As soon as they try to do that, IT policy does not allow you to save the file to a different location. You can only save the file into a managed app provided by the company, not to your personal app. Even if you try to copy the file from that app on a document and try to paste it on a WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter chat, or anywhere, in this case, Notepad, you try to do that, sorry, your data cannot be pasted here. So a good example of a DLP use case where as a CISO, your concern is, I don't want my data to be saved or copied or change anything on an device which is not managed by my company. Yeah? Next one, I want to deny application when the device is jailbroken. So in this case, device has a risk. They try to access the app provided by company. As soon as they open it, sorry, now I can monitor in my system. I know the device has gone out of compliant. You cannot access my application, and you can monitor in your backend, which app, which users, what happened to that, which applications and all you blocked, and you can have a monitoring. You can send this particular logs and alert into your SIM for a better visibility. Next one, I want to deny access to the application when device is not compliant. That's a classic policy. You don't want your employee to access any of my resources remotely in case there is a threat onto the laptop or operating system. In this case, a simple use case, you have a Windows Defender firewall. As per the company policy, every device should have a firewall enabled on them. As soon as they switch it off, they try to access your application, it will say you can't do it. Everything is automated. There is no human required to block and unblock and all those things. As soon as you turn it on, you can get access to the company. This is the beauty of automations and intelligent automation at the back end, which you have to apply in your zero trust architecture, because we have a limited resource and too much of data to be managed of. So automatic, everything is automated here without any human being. As soon as they turn it on, they can get access to the environment. If their laptop is infected with a ransomware or encryption, they try to access the application. Sorry, you cannot go here because we identify that there is a risk or your device is at risk. It has been isolated. You can't access the network. So based on the security policy or a security risk, you can control the access of that. As you can see, device is not compliant or risky and all, and you have your Defender Security Center portal which shows you how many files are malicious, which machine, what is infected, and you can automate the whole playbook. You can run a playbook as soon as the device, as soon as a risk is identified on a particular machine, there will be a playbook automatically run. It will go and search for any other device which has a similar infection. It will get blocked and isolated, or even many times, even you can go further, even you can remediate as well. You can push the agent in terms of a full wipe out. Once the device is wiped, the employee has to again add or enroll that device, and they get access to it. They don't need to come to office all the way from wherever they are working, 10, 20 kilometers and look for IT. Anyway, office is closed. So what can you do on that? If you have that kind of architecture setup or technology setup, they can do everything remotely without any human intervention, or with a little bit of support from you as an IT. Next one, quickly. I want to deny access to an app using an unauthorized app or a browser. So this is the case where I know all my employees are only in Bahrain. They don't work from any other country. I try to go and access, I change my, as an example for the demo, I use a Tor browser, try to change the location, try to access it. They said, sorry, you cannot access it right now because of a change in location. And this is where your CASB product come into play. You can see if it is a Tor IP or any infrequent countries you're trying to access, based on which application you try to access, it gives you a risk, and all those things you can monitor in detail, as well. So this is how you apply those, as I showed you in the demo, in a practical way. Apply those principles, apply those conditions, have a risk scoring engine which helps you from the technology point of view, and then you can apply the control as I give you a demo: allow, not allow, limit access, second factor authentication, password reset, all those things. You can do it based on what I just shared with you on that. So next step, first you need to know where you are today. So we have a maturity model which you can download from this particular link, and I will be sharing the slide deck with Dr. Mazin and the board team. They will be sending you by email later on, so you can have the full picture. You can go through in detail slowly everything, and recording also is available on that. I have lots of learning link for you as a part of this presentation. So do a maturity assessment. Where are you today? Traditional, advanced, or optimal? And this is how you can identify what's your current posture and where you want to go, where you are, where you want to go today, and where you want to be tomorrow, which level you want to go. Second step, go to our Zero Trust portal. There is a maturity model, as you can see, complete, but there is an assessment tool as well, which looks like this. So go to this portal. It's everything is free, publicly available. Go and pick up any domain which you want to focus based on the risk posture what you have. According to your risk management framework, if you feel that identity is the biggest risk for you, because now you have an employee working from home and working remotely, and so get started with the identity. It will ask you a series of questions, and based on the answer what you give you, answer which you feed in, it will create a work plan for you saying that do this A, B, C, D first. Focus on securing the password. Try to go passwordless. Eliminate the admin user. This is what you need to do. Blah blah blah. All those things. Similarly, go and answer questions on device, application, infrastructure, data, and network, and you have the full plan. You can have a parallel project running together. One team will focus on identity, second on device, third on application, and fourth and so forth, and get started with the journey. Next step, you will of course need some help in terms of a deployment model. So there is a deployment portal as well, which will help you in each domain based on the question answer you've given in the maturity assessment. What I need to do on identity, what are the things I need to apply for it? People, process, technology, all three areas as well on that. And I have all the links here for you as a part of this with this presentation. You can go through in detail, learn more, look at the videos, look at the vision paper, look at the principle in detail. I have a full case study in a PDF format, which you can download it here. How Microsoft did it, how Microsoft allowed our employee to work from home securely using Zero Trust strategy. There's a detailed video as well as presentations and white paper as well on that. So I have heaps of resources for you to go back and check through.